Dear Mr. or Mrs. Listener, we accept the fact that you're going to sacrifice a whole hour to listen to this podcast, but we think you are crazy. In the simplest terms, you see us as you want to see us: a Ninja Turtle, a Jedi, a redhead, a Mike. Sincerely yours, Redhead Family Therapy Guy, and a Mike.
Don't you forget about the bugger. So walk on by. You better listen to this thing. It's gonna be great. All right. You have found us yet again, another time, the Redhead Family Therapy Guy
And a Mike.
podcast.
Welcome back, everyone.
And we're coming at you with the classic. This feels like an ultra classic.
1989 Batman.
Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman. And this was a much different movie than I remembered it.
Oh,
I don't think I've
Batman.
watched it. Like, I don't even know. I'm sure I've watched it like maybe once or twice or, a few times after the theaters as a kid, but I don't think I've watched it.
I was obsessed with this
long
one.
time.
And Batman Returns, although Batman Returns was a darker one.
It was really dark.
I remember with those
I remember
two.
being grossed out by the Penguin's like bloodlust.
Yeah, Danny DeVito. He did a good Penguin. Yeah, so I grew up watching the classic series, which is really like comedy, kind of goofy, fun stuff.
Oh, sure.
Well, with Adam West. Go ahead.
And I have to say, watching this now, I relate to like being a kid when Batman came out and watching the other one. Like, it felt kind of like there'd been that kind of distance of like reality,
the cool thing,
magic or whatever.
Yeah, the cool thing about Batman, the 1989 Batman with Michael Keaton, to me, is they really did a good job at bringing it from the series, which is really just kind of goofy, right, to a more serious. So it's neat to look at the evolution, right? Because you have like this midpoint where Batman 1989 is kind of the middle ground, and then you go to Dark Knight trilogy, and then it's like real action drama, serious Batman. And so that was something that I always thought was fun with the 1989 Batman, is I feel like, especially with Joker, I feel like they have these fun, like, kickback nods to the series, like his coloring. It's really bright coloring. His helicopter to me reminds me of watching the old classic series. And so there's like these nods, and the way that Joker is, like the way Jack Nicholson acts as Joker is more what I remember. Yeah. From kind of that goofy, the more goofy style of what I remember the series being. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like this middle ground where they're trying to say, okay, we probably have a fan base from the series, but we also want to make it more of like this movie and have some dark themes and adult themes to it. And so I feel like it's kind of this evolution to what we have now. I've not seen the newest movie, so I can't speak for that, but
it's a
definitely movie. Like a middle ground between Dark Knight trilogy and the series. Yeah. And I love the colors. I love the colors of Joker, like his bright purple. I love the settings in this movie.
Yeah, like they were very industrial and dirty and gritty.
Yeah.
And they had they brought like an ominous. Well, it felt, I think as a kid, I even remember feeling like, oh, it feels like a comic book. Like it had like
it's
a
almost
comic
like
book feel.
Like a Dick Tracy. Do you remember seeing Dick Tracy as a kid?
Yeah. Well,
like I feel like it had a little bit of that feel to it.
Well, yeah, they all wear like suits. Like they all had like suits. Like all the bad guys had suits. I think there was even one scene where like all the cops had suits. And I was like, wait,
it's like a throwback to, a modern aged film, but set in the 40s or 50s type thing. Right. But everything else is kind of modernized in it. Really interesting.
They were trying to go with like the prohibition mob feel or something like that.
Yes.
Because they all had hats too. They all had like the hats.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
like that era. You know what I
And
mean? So yeah, it was really interesting.
I love, because if you look at the series, it definitely has all the flair and feeling of a 50s or 60s, a 60s series. You know, the Batmobile is, I don't know what kind of car it is. It looks like
That's not a
probably a,
car. I mean, it's a
probably a
long drawn
Cadillac
out. I mean, it has
or
like,
something like that from the series. And so, you know,
oh, I got you.
you have that 60s, and then come to the movie and it's modernized cars, right? But then all the dress and kind of like the dress of everyone, how they're dressed and how they behave, kind of reminds me more of like the series setting where it's
Right.
back in the
Well,
60s,
and they all had like
maybe 70s.
revolvers. Like I thought it was interesting. It was all
Uh-huh.
like
I,
revolvers, you know, versus like locks or whatever.
yeah, I
So
love Joker's revolver where he shoots down the bat
yeah, I
wing,
was
where
like,
it's
wait a
like a
minute.
3-foot line.
I was like, wait a
barrel.
second, did I buy that as a kid? I'm like, really? Like Batman has like rockets and like airplane machine gun artillery, like he's drawing down on him, and the Joker's like pulling his gun out of his pants and like
Yeah.
and like takes the thing down. I'm like, what? I'm like, what is Tim Burton doing here? I'm like, what's the message here?
It's so
That
classic
Joker,
to me to combine the two. So you have Michael Keaton, which is like the birth of the serious Batman in film. Like he
well,
does such a
serious or
wonderful
even
job of
Marvel.
being Bruce Wayne and being Batman compared to the Adam West Batman.
Sure, sure.
And then you have Joker, Jack Nicholson, paying homage to the series, right? To this kind of
Really,
goofy-ish, funny
but
comedy
it's
style.
psychotic. It's
He
crazy.
is
Like it
psychotic.
felt.
He's
He's
like one flew
crazy.
over the cuckoo's nest, Jack
He's
Nicholson.
totally crazy. Well, and this is the first. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like this is the first serious film that they ever did with like comic book, and it opened up the whole vein of everything that they do
Yeah.
now. Right?
I
Like
mean,
no other.
Superman was definitely
Oh,
prior
okay.
to Batman,
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
but I don't know of any other Batman movies besides the series, but the series was like a comedy style series from what I
Right.
remember. I haven't watched it for probably 20 years, but from what I remember. And so yeah, this was definitely along the vein of more serious, you know, Superman was definitely serious, right? Or at least like a I don't know if serious is the right word, but it's not, you know, big money production. It is a big money production. It's something that is being taken seriously. And
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, you get Michael Keaton, and that's what I loved about the movie as a kid was you have like this real Batman. It's not Adam West with like these spandex type clothes and fabric cowl on his head, but you have this amazing Batman suit.
Yes.
I still love the Michael Keaton Batman suit till to date. My favorite by far. I
Really.
love the classic yellow bat symbol
Mm-hmm.
being offset by the black rubbery suit. Still by far. Like I was watching this movie and I was like, oh, that suit is so nostalgic and so awesome to me.
I've enjoyed the evolution. I don't think I like any of the other bat symbols. I definitely am with you on the white contrast in the classic sense. But and I remember, man, like that Batman symbol was on like all of my books. Like you remember,
Yeah.
dude, wrapping your textbooks in paper bags, right?
Yep.
From the
Grocery
grocery
store.
store. And so Batman was like on every single one of my, you know, paper bag book covers in school. Like that was like the thing to like draw it on there and everything.
I
So
was
yeah,
yeah,
it's but I
obsessed.
enjoy the evolution. I think that each iteration has been really cool, but I'm with you on.
Yeah, I love where Batman has gone. I mean, I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but
Mhm.
for me, you know, and even the rising generation will probably be like, oh no, this one was the one for me. For me, that nostalgic sense of Batman has always been Michael Keaton. And I
Well,
don't
I
think
think
there's ever anything that can change that for me. Like he is Batman and he's Bruce Wayne.
well,
And I
he's the
love the
best
way he
Bruce. He's
plays.
the best Bruce Wayne by far. Like I
Oh, I
thought that
love it.
instantly. That just the way that they kind of introduced him at the party scene with Vicky Vale, where he's just like signing the thing, or whatever. She's like, "Do you know Bruce Wayne?" And he's like, "Totally cool." He's all like, Like, it's probably around here somewhere or something like that, like whatever he says. I don't know what the line was, but
I
like
think
I just thought he's just smooth and he's just like charming, and like the other ones, and it's here too, but like he's so brutish and so like pained and so traumatized, and he is in this one too, but Bruce Wayne isn't as much, where the other guy, with the other ones, like that riddled pain of revenge and vengeance like seeps through in a really
yeah.
profound way, where this Bruce Wayne is more cosmopolitan. But it's also interesting that he like also wasn't known. Like in all the other Batman iterations, he's like the most known person in Gotham. And in this one,
Mhm.
like he's all like, oh, like nobody knew that his parents like had died outside the theater in that part of town or whatever. And nobody kind of knew who he was. It was like he was this kind of off the radar rich kook or something like that, not the known force of wealth in the city or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's kind of a more quiet, wealthy person, right? Where he's not as flamboyant as I feel like maybe they make
The
Batman
other
to be now.
the other
Flamboyant might not be the
iterations.
right, yeah, but he's more out there in the public eye. I love, yes, the Vicky Vale scene in the beginning, and then I love the dinner scene with
Hilarious.
Bruce
Like
Wayne and Vicky Vale, where yeah, they're sitting long ways.
like 50 yards away from each other at this
And I
table.
love
Can
the
I get the
comment.
salt? And he's all
What
like,
did
what?
yeah, yeah, and
What?
what does she say to him? She says something like, uh,
You
"Do
eat
you
here
like
often?
this room?" Or yeah, "Do you eat here
Yeah.
often?" And I
And
love the
he's
way he
like,
plays that is perfect, where he just kind of,
I don't
I
think
don't
I've ever
think I've
been
ever
in
been
this
in this
room.
room. It's
That was
just
great.
this, it's just this genuine, like you love Bruce Wayne. This
Right.
guy
Well, and
and
then
his
the follow-up for that is they end up in the kitchen with
yeah, with Alfred. And
yeah, with
and
Alfred like just chilling.
I love even his interaction. So you have the news, the other reporter guy. So she's the photographer and she's working with the reporter. Is it Barry or something? I can't remember. It's not Barry Allen, but
Oh,
the dude, the
oh yeah,
reporter
yeah.
dude, she's working with this
Oh
guy.
yeah. What's
And
that?
this guy's totally just making fun of Bruce Wayne and he just goes with it. Like he doesn't even care. He's just kind of, and then
Yeah.
he gives him the grant, right? The
Yeah.
the,
He's
the
like,
reporter
oh,
guy's like,
Alfred.
"Hey, it'd be awesome if you gave me a grant." And it's like, "Okay, Alfred, give
Yeah,
him
at
a
the end.
grant."
He's all like, oh yeah, and Alfred, this guy needs a grant right here.
I
Yeah.
love the way he plays Bruce Wayne. I love the way he plays Batman. His mannerisms. I feel like Michael Keaton is really what started some of the mannerisms, right? You get the turn where you don't move the neck. And that was partially due, I think, to the
Can't.
suit
Yeah, I
itself.
was gonna
Yeah.
say that was
But
the one thing about the suit. Even as a kid, I was like, it can't make it so his neck turns. Like, so I think that
yeah.
of
But
evolution
it
is a little bit.
adds kind of this, the way Michael Keaton did it for me, especially as a kid, is you still got his personality out of it, right? You still got this Batman with Bruce Wayne underneath, out of just his little quirks or his little movements within his suit. But yes, the Batman suit from the 1989 movie, my favorite suit. Then the Batmobile is my favorite Batmobile of any they've done. I love the 1989 Batmobile. I remember as a kid, just the lines on it are so smooth. And of course, when it's driving, you're like, oh man, that probably isn't really that fast. Like it's just this huge thing.
Even well, even watching this film, you're like,
Yeah,
that
you're like,
thing's laboring
yeah,
a little
that
bit
thing,
around
that
that
thing
corner.
looks like it's ready to fall apart. But I
You're like, that thing's
love it.
glued together.
And I don't know for you, but I remember as a kid watching this movie, I was just so, I loved Batman. But I remember watching this movie as a kid. And when it goes into the
Shield mode.
armor, yeah, sealed mode, I remember as a kid being like, oh my gosh,
What
that
in the
is
world is that?
awesome.
Yeah, that was some pretty significant special effects for that
Oh,
day and age, I
yeah.
think, right?
1989, like you're thinking about the 80s, late 80s. But yeah, I love that. And then the Batwing, the scene where the Batwing goes up into the sky and pauses right in front of the
It's pretty
moon.
legit.
You can't get more iconic than
That's
that.
pretty
Like
legit.
that is so nostalgic to me. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, even though I got shot down by one bullet from the Joker. But
Well, hey, this was a 3-foot barrel with, I don't know,
on
probably a
a
tiny
revolver.
bullet in it, 22 gauge bullet or something. But
Well, he
but
just
I
like ends
loved
up
it.
like stuck under like shrapnel
I will say
while
this. I love the coloring of Jack Nicholson. I love how he's so kind of bright and flagrant. But Heath Ledger's still, I love, like, Michael Keaton's my favorite Batman, always will be. But Heath Ledger, I feel like, does Joker the best. So Jack
he kind
Nicholson's
of,
awesome. He's classic, but
yeah, he kind of knocked it out of the freaking park, dude.
yeah, that was
I mean, come
his
on.
Joker is amazing. But
Well, he's
Jack
so
Nicholson,
much
I
more
love.
demented.
He,
Well, he's like calculated.
yeah,
He's a calculated, demented
yes,
sociopath. Where Jack Nicholson's just an out of control, like chaotic mess. You know what I mean?
yep.
Like even that last scene, it's so disturbing. You know,
Oh,
he's like
that gave me,
kicking the bricks. You know what I mean? Like when
yeah.
they're hanging or whatever, and he's like kicking the bricks and like almost
The
falling
way he
down. And just
plays that is awesome.
like
Like, I feel
just
like
like
that last scene,
flowing.
Jack Nicholson does a great job
It's
at
just
bringing the Joker to life. Like, I feel like it's in
yeah.
that last scene where you really see the potential there, of what he probably could have done with the Joker if they did more with it. But that last, where he falls and he's dead on the ground, and the cackling noise, that, as a kid, I always thought that was so freaky. Like, that was like
Everything
this
about it. Well, that's the Tim Burton.
nightmares.
Well, it struck me this time as like I was watching it and like, or the opening credits, I was like, oh, Tim Burton directed it. No
Oh
wonder
yeah,
it's like so
you can totally tell.
twisted. Yeah, he
Yeah,
always has that twisted, kooky kind of feel about it. You know what I mean? Like I remember as a kid really being kind of, I mean, I was older, you know, in '89. But I remember being like just kind of disturbed by the death smile. You know, they're poisoned and they end up with the death smile.
yeah.
It was just very creepy. It was very creepy
Well, and I
and
think,
strange.
all of Tim Burton's movies are that way, right? That they're
Hmm.
kind of, there just is something off about it, right? There's something, it's tweaked enough that it's like, oh, this is weird. And I feel you get a feel for that in Batman Returns. It's just a little, like, there's a little something off that kind of gives you that feeling of, whoa, what's going on? But
Right. Which
um
brings the comic book feel out, you know, which
yeah.
is, I think works. You know, it's not a straight show
Well, and the
and it shouldn't
sets,
be,
I
you
mean,
know.
the sets they use on Batman are really impressive. Like, I'm surprised. I mean, they have just the kind of the sets that are just the scene, like the cityscapes or whatever. But then some of these sets seem really involved. And even like when you
Oh
go
gosh,
into
yeah.
the house, or when you're in front of the, like, the courthouse or whatever that is, they have a couple scenes there, and like the main thoroughfare of the city of
Well, the
Gotham.
mansion, the
Yeah, the
Bruce Wayne mansion.
mansion, and then even the news place, like, they're really kind of grand. And the
Yeah.
museum, right, when they go to have, or she goes to the dinner where she thinks Bruce has invited her, but it was really Joker.
Hmm.
Really, these grand sets, which I feel like is really cool. I feel
So
like nowadays you get more of the CGI effect instead of these kind of real grand sets,
yeah, it's true.
built
So
sets.
tell me, this movie being such a favorite of yours as a kid, like what is it about the story and soul of Batman that was so meaningful for you, that drew you in so much? Because I liked this show and it was iconic for me. But I mean, I wasn't in love with it like I know that you are. So what
I
about it was it that
I've
pulled you in so much?
always liked the superheroes that are human, right? So Batman or Green Arrow. I mean, there are others, but I really, and those are both DC. I like DC characters. I mean, there's Marvel characters that are human also, but human in that they don't, their superpower is, like, their will, or their ingenuity, or their resilience. And that's something that was always appealing to me for Batman, was that this is a guy that uses his wealth to become a superhero, right? He needs the suit. He needs things to protect him. He needs to practice his art. And that's true. You see that throughout. Like, I love that about Dark Knight trilogy, right? Where you really see him hone his craft. Where in this one, you don't really see him doing that, right? You don't see Michael Keaton really doing much, besides you see him hanging upside down the one time to, like, stretch himself, or I don't know if he's doing what, maybe trying to alleviate some pain or something, but I've always loved that about Batman is that he's human and his superpower is not that he has the ability to fly or that he has the,
Supernatural.
supernatural strength or anything like that. And so I've always enjoyed that and loved that about superheroes. I mean, I love the superheroes that have the supernatural abilities also. For this movie, I loved, I've always loved the suit and the car and the Batwing. So those three things as a kid, I was like, holy cow, like I could do that. I just need the suit, the car, and the Batwing. You don't need to be superhuman.
And some billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And an Alfred.
Well, yeah, you need the Alfred and billions of dollars in the Batcave. So I've always loved that about Batman. I love Superman because Superman, and I'm just thinking DC, and I always kind of think about Batman and Superman together. But I love Superman because Superman is like this, do what is right at all costs, right?
Superman, yeah.
But Superman also is like a god, like he's got superhuman abilities, where Batman is not. Batman's like us, but he uses his drive and his will to accomplish good things. Like Batman doesn't kill people. He tries to just get them, right? He tries to just get them and have them be arrested. And I love that. It's not about
some folks in this show though.
It's not about, well, I think that the goal is not to kill though. Even with Joker, when Joker fell into the thing, he was trying to save him.
Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone dies, it's not purposeful. That wasn't his intent going into it.
Well,
I guess
the
stop an action.
The only one I would maybe like cut hairs is when he's flying his bat plane, he does indiscriminately just shoot up, and they portray it like a couple of them are getting shot up by the bullets, during the parade scene. But no, I think that commitment I think holds up. That he's just bringing them to justice, even though he is a vigilante. But yeah, I think but that's the really cool thing about Batman, or definitely in the other film trilogy, or not trilogies, but film iterations, is that he's just so dark and vexed. And the newest one, I mean, he is deeply, disturbingly dark and vexed. But it's a long, slow, dark movie. But there's this thing of hope that comes out at the end, that he kind of reconnects with hope, which I think was really kind of cool. I mean, it was like pretty much the whole point of the movie. It felt kind of filed down to this one point, but I enjoyed it anyway. But so yeah, this movie, I appreciate that, and I think that's that's something that really stands out to me too, is that he is this guy with will and determination to do something in this city. The thing that struck me that never occurred to me when I was a kid is how much of this story, and I'm not super familiar with the other Batmans enough to comment, like, is really so much about him and Vicky Vale, like in the love story. A lot of the story,
yeah,
is the love story. And it's really interesting because Vicky Vale is really I don't want to say the goal, but the what the beta male Knox reporter guy, Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton and Bruce Wayne, like, she's what it all revolves around.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of the story is about the fall in love moment that they have, and then how that plays out. And this is going to sound, I might get raked over the coals for this, but what struck me that this movie reminded me of?
What?
Is like Beauty and the Beast. That like Vicky Vale is trying to kind of subdue the beast, which is the Batman. Like, she's fascinated with the Batman, right? The ferocious, out of control shadow, the darkness of man. and she's
Mhm.
trying to kind of wrangle that in. And there's this whole, like, where he's trying to be vulnerable, and he's not even the one that tells her, like, Alfred is the one that, like, brings her into the lair,
Yeah.
and he's like trying to in that scene, but he can't do it. And of course, the Joker interrupts, and all of that, the chaos interrupts his ability to kind of do that. But even then, like, kind of after the fact, he's like, this is my work, like, this is my job, this is what I have to do. And even at the end, she's like sitting alone while he's like out in his Batman glory, with the sign being kind of
Yeah.
flicked on. It's this interesting idea of that idea of the woman subduing, like, the ideal woman, especially in the opening scene. Is it the opening scene, or maybe it's the dinner scene, where she's almost like this Virgin Mary, kind of like all in white,
Oh, yeah,
like
at the dinner party
poofy
thing.
arms, the dinner party. It's like this
Uh-huh.
over the top. You know what I mean? There's definitely some symbols being played on there with some of this. I don't know. What do you think of it? Is that too out there, or what?
No, yeah, I could see a comparison to Beauty and the Beast. That's an interesting take on it, and I can definitely see that present. Um, it's interesting to me, kind of going off of that. At one point, she says to him, she's like, "Why?" Um, oh, what does she say? Something like, why do you do it? Or why can't you stop? Or, and she kind of asks a few times. And finally his response is, because I think he says something like, there's no one else that can do it, or who else would do
It's
it, or
kind of
something like
like the
that.
responsibility of the masculine in society to take care of the riffraff, to
Well,
protect, to be
and,
there, for the people, to be there to
and
to get rid of the chaos of the world or whatever.
I kind of think about that, like in our lives, how often do we feel like we have to do something that no one else can do, and we don't want to affect anyone else, so we kind of push others to the side and do it ourselves,
Yeah, push
when
others away. Yeah.
yeah, when in actuality maybe the answer is, we don't have to do it, or maybe the answer is, we're saying, like, that's pulling us away from maybe what does matter. I feel like with Batman, or with Bruce Wayne in that moment, he's using Batman as an excuse, or a distraction from really the pain that he needs to deal with and
Of the
resolve.
loss. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of the loss of his parents, and then also probably somewhat a feeling of not being enough, not being adequate. That's going to happen when you lose parents,
You watch
regardless
your
of the
parents
reason
get
why.
slayed in front of you
Well, and he
by
probably feels some blame for that to some degree. I'm sure in his head, he probably has thought, I could have stopped that. I could have done something if I was more powerful, or I was more strong, which then leads him to being this Batman, this vigilante that goes and saves people with the desire to really save everyone involved, right? Even the bad guys, he doesn't want them to die. He wants to stop them from doing what they're doing, and then offer them up to justice so that they can
it's so
hopefully learn and grow and progress. And it's interesting to me, because I find that in our lives, how often do we maybe place so much importance in something, but maybe that thing really isn't important, but we're using it as a distraction from what maybe is important. And I think that's what Vicky Vale,
kind of
represents to
called
me.
upon.
Yeah, is, hey, here's something that
But it
is
is
important
important.
and meaningful.
I mean, isn't
Well,
it important?
I
The
mean,
thing
there's a
that's
police force. There's all these things in place. Is that really important for him to do, is
Yeah.
the question. I think that's the overarching theme throughout Batman is this something you have to
Well,
put everything else to the side for, or are
right.
you running away from what's important, using these things as a distraction from dealing with what you need to deal with? And I think that's a
Well,
characteristic of
well,
all of us.
well, and a common theme in his vigilantism trying to solve these issues is, I mean, the portrayal always is that Gotham is a city that's rotting from inside out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's interesting that he's a vigilante trying to support legitimate justice, but he's doing that in an ironic outside of justice way to a
Yeah.
system that is fallen apart and is corrupting and rotting from within, because Grissom or attorney general is always dirty or always in cahoots with whoever the leading mob boss is
which
in
is
whatever iteration they're doing.
even more ironic to me, because isn't that just symbolic of what's happening with Batman? He's
Mm-hmm.
really kind of rotting from the inside out because he's distracting himself from dealing with what probably really is important and what really matters
Yeah.
and what needs to be dealt with. And that's his pain and his feelings of inadequacy. And we do that, right? We say this thing's more important than this thing. And
Well,
I'm not
and he
saying,
like makes a martyr of himself, kind
yeah,
of.
and I'm not saying that that maybe that thing is more important than this other thing over here that you don't want to deal with. But I think we also have to ask ourselves, is that thing really important? Or am I just allowing myself to think that needs to be dealt with now because I don't want to deal with this other thing? I'm trying to run away from it. And I think it's uh, that thought process that most of us go down, that path of doing these things. We get so busy with work, or we get so busy with all these extracurricular activities in life, when maybe we're not dealing with ourselves and what we have at home, when that's the most important. But we're using these rationales of, well, this is important, this is important, this needs to be dealt with. Like Batman, Gotham needs to be saved. Well, what about Batman? And what about, his own issues at home, which right now is nothing really. He has people wanting him. And so I think in life we do that too, where we put so much importance on these things outside that I think are really easier distractions to move towards than dealing with the pain of what's going on with ourselves or what's going on at home.
Yeah,
That's
man,
kind of what
just
I get out of
well,
with the
and
Vicky
it's an
Bell thing,
interest.
is
Well,
kind of where I go with that.
it's an interesting thing that never resolves itself either. You know what I mean? In the Batman story, it never does resolve itself. It's not ever
Which is
a
characteristic of
happy.
most of us, I think, in
Yeah,
life.
it's never a happy ending. And he is ending up stoic. But there's something to that as well, right? Because I mean, one of the things that we love about Batman, like you've said, is this determination to stand up to those things, to be that guy, which I think is, admirable and powerful, that though there is this corruption, he's seeking to bring it to light. Well, I guess not in this version as much,
Well, and
but to confront it.
I think this true superhero of like this, the true power of Batman is Bruce Wayne doing those things. So him not needing to hide, but Bruce Wayne doing those things. And I don't think he can truly become Bruce Wayne and become an advocate that is out in the public and doing things in a legal way without dealing with those things that he's running away from by being
Well, and
Batman.
that's one of the things that we connect with, is there's just such a deep, dark, kind of vengeful shadow, a plagued and vexed man.
Yeah,
You know what I
which is
mean?
what happens with Harvey Dent, right? You have this Harvey Dent who becomes Two-Face, right? And it's this idea that we run away from maybe the pain, and instead of addressing those things, become something that,
Split.
yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
we didn't
And
mean to
then therefore
become.
never whole. Yeah,
Yeah.
split and therefore never whole, never won,
But
never.
speaking of Two-Face, I love that Lando Calrissian plays Harvey Dent in this. That is
Yeah, I was
awesome.
like, my son was in there. Jack was in there. He's like, isn't that like the guy from Star Wars? I'm like, yeah, that's Lando. I was like, I don't think I realized that Lando occurs. Well, one of the other characters that really like took me back, who was like
Uh-huh.
was Grissom, man. Like that guy,
Which one was Grissom? Was that
the old
the
guy,
bad police dude, or?
that like tried to that set Jack, that sent the Joker up
Oh, that's right.
at
That's right.
the one that owned all
Yeah,
the
he's in a
chemical
lot of
plant and everything.
Western
Like that old
movies, and
school, like the 80s, 70s. He was always kind of like the bad guy with his bad
yeah.
teeth and all that.
Yeah,
It
they had
was
some good characters in this movie. I feel like the actors that they got to play them. There's another one I was thinking of a couple minutes ago and I can't remember. Um, but I also enjoy how Joker has such a connection to Batman, right? He not only is just this like bad guy, he's the guy who killed Bruce Wayne's parents. He's the one that shot them dead. And I find that that's a really interesting connection that they make in this movie, where of course they don't make that in the Dark Knight. I don't remember them making that connection in the Dark Knight trilogy
Yeah, the
at
one
all.
with Christian Bale. Yeah, they do.
Oh, is it? So then Heath
Oh
Ledger
yeah, yeah.
killed his
It's the
parents?
same. It's the same. Oh no, no, no. I'm thinking of Batman Begins. I'm sorry. Is that the same? Is that the same iteration? Is that Christian Bale?
Christian Bale as Batman Begins.
So, yeah, I'm thinking of Batman Begins because that one plays the same storyline, right? Of his parents being killed and he couldn't do anything, which is why he
Yeah, but
disappears.
it's Joker who kills his parents. Where in the Dark Knight trilogy, it's just
Yeah.
some
Oh
guy
yeah,
that kills his
it's
parents,
the
right? I
random
think
guy
if
who
I'm
gets
remembering
yeah,
right.
that's right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's the court scene where he's got the gun in his pants
Yeah.
and he was going to come out, and that's when he decides to take off because he was going to kill him.
Yep.
Right there, and that's where what's her name, Tom Cruise's ex-wife, is all like
Yeah.
slaps him
The
in the
Dawson's
face.
Creek girl.
Yeah, slaps him in the face, and he's
Joey.
like,
I
"You
can't
know
remember
better
her
than
real
me."
name. But
Yeah.
that's what I thought was
Anywho,
interesting with the 1989 is that they make that connection that it's Joker who kills his parents. And he makes the connection right by the saying, what is the saying? You dance something with the devil or something like that.
oh
I can't
yeah,
remember.
you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? Which
Yeah.
is what he says to the kid, but then he doesn't complete the final. It sounds like he was going to murder him, but he didn't. He gets pulled off by
Yeah,
the
he was going to
psychic
kill
henchman or whatever.
Bruce Wayne, which is
Yeah, as a child.
kind of a cool storyline because it's like, oh man, he almost got rid of Batman to begin, and then Batman ends up sticking
Well, it's
around and
interesting how,
avenging his
yeah, like
parents.
so the Joker made Batman and the Batman made Joker, right? Because he drops him
Hmm.
into the chemical
Which
ooze
is
or
kind of
whatever.
fun. They do that little skit at the end, right, where it's like, well, Batman's kind of like, I'm just returning the favor. You made me, now I made you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's interesting. And that whole last scene was really interesting. I would love to kind of get in the head of Tim Burton because again, it was interesting to me that like Batman crashes, the Joker's alone. I guess he's got the one henchman with him. And he takes her into a church at the top of the church and he's like
Mhm.
serenading her and trying to woo her, in his psychotic way. It just seems like there's some important symbols there again around this idea of the divine feminine or the ideal feminine and these different male types, this kind of this beta male, this crazy
There could be.
man.
That's way above my
And then
pay grade.
there's also this vibe of um what would you call Bruce Wayne? What do they call Bruce Wayne? Like as an iconic personage, they call him like a
You mean just like in the city, like he's
well, that he's
this,
this rich,
yeah,
because that's the point that Knox makes.
kind of
He's all
like a
like,
philanthropist type guy or something where he
yeah,
has
there's like
all
a
this
word
money
that
and
they use, like a cosmopolitan male or something like that. But that's one of the things that Knox says. It's like, the more money they have, the more shallow they are, or something like that. Doesn't he
yeah,
say
he does make
something like
that
that?
comment.
You know,
He does. I think
um,
after Bruce Wayne says to Alfred, give him the grant, and Wayne leaves, and then he makes the comment about him being eccentric and how, they're something like that, shallowness with the more money they have. I
yeah, and so it's interesting of these male types that are all again to me like trying to win the favor of Vicky Vale, and then this culmination of the movie at this church where there's this mano a mano of this dark vigilante and this crazed psychopath, and his giggle nonsense. You know what I mean? It's really, I don't know. There's something there that feels like it's pulling on my subconscious that's important and meaningful to kind of whittle out. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I have it worked out, but there's something there that seems essential. And maybe it's part of maybe it's a commentary on men and how we're trying to find favor or connection or the different ways that we try to play out power you know, because even there, because even part of the interaction between Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale when he shows up at her apartment after she's been accosted by the Joker, and she's like confronting him, and he's like, "Will you sit down and shut up?" And that's where he's like trying to be vulnerable with her. You know, there's
Mhm.
just these interesting aspects of courtship. You know, you've got the again the reporter trying to kind of court her, like, can I take you to dinner? And you've got Nicholson or the Joker, who's like, I don't know, abused. You know, it was always creeped the heck out of me as a kid with her having the mask, like, can we go
Yeah.
wherever? And then like she takes off the mask and her face is like like acided,
Yeah, it's
like
been
up
like
and everything.
burned or something.
Yeah, it's like, let me show you my artwork or whatever. And so there's something there about, you know, all of them pursuing Vicky Vale. But the one that wins out is the Batman, even the persona with it. Because you could even look at Bruce Wayne and Batman as different male figures, alter egos or whatever. But it's the Batman that saves her. It's the Batman that rescues her. Um, it's her that is drawn to him most, and she's the one that uncovers his secret. I thought it was a little bit of a bad look that Batman like kind of gave her a date rape drug, and she woke up without the film like the next day, not remembering, and like being back in her apartment. I'm like, that didn't age real well, I guess. You know what I mean? Do you know what
Oh
I'm
yeah, I
talking
didn't
about?
even notice. I know she woke up, but I didn't know that he drugged her.
Yeah, he did something to her that she passed out, and then like she woke up the next day, and she like sits up and she's like, dang, it's gone, because she had shoved it like in her blouse or bra or whatever, the film,
Yeah,
because
the
she had
the
taken the picture.
film, and he had taken the film
Yeah,
because
he
he
did
said there was
something,
like one
or
other
maybe it
thing.
was the Joker that did something, and then he just returns her home to safety, but took back his
Yeah,
secret
because
or
he had
whatever.
just rescued her. I think that was after the museum, was it? It was after she had
Yeah.
taken pictures of him beating up some of the
Well, they pull. He ends
guards.
up. He ends up, uh, like passed out on the street, and they pull up his mask, and she's taking pictures,
Oh, that's
and he
right.
comes. He comes to, and so that's him, like, kind of protecting his secret or whatever,
I thought it
protecting
was
his
fun. I
vulnerability.
thought it was fun though how she was like, "Oh, I'm 108 pounds," and then he's like, "Yeah, you're not 108 pounds," which I thought was silly that they,
So
because
great.
that's such a
It's
that
great.
seems like I don't know how tall she is, but that's a really really small weight.
Yeah, there's
And
no
so I
way that.
love how he's like, no, just to be like, it's okay to be truthful, but you don't need to feel like you have to be 108 pounds. I will say this though, I love Kim Basinger in this movie, and as a kid, I always loved the Real McCoy. I think that's what it was called. Do you remember that movie where
No, I remember hearing it, but
she's like she's like a professional thief that her son gets like kidnapped, and then she has to go and do one last like gig, if I remember right. I think that's the plot of it. But I think a cool little tidbit is that the Real McCoy has Kim Basinger, who plays Vicky Vale in the Batman, but it also has Val Kilmer in it, who plays
mm,
Batman in Batman Returns, I believe. Is that what it is? It's the one
like the third
with
one
Riddler. Yeah. Yeah, with
with
Riddler
Jim Carrey
mhm,
and
and
the the guy.
there's
What's
one
that?
other person in it. I can't think
Yeah,
right now, but
he's
it's
like the
not because George Clooney is the one with Batman and Robin is George Clooney because I think that one
right
has Robin in it, and then it has Arnold as Mr. Freeze or
Schwarzenegger.
whatever.
Yeah.
But I always thought that was cool that she was in that movie that I liked with Val Kilmer, and then Val Kilmer becomes Batman.
Yes, I don't know. I honestly, I don't think I even saw that one.
Oh
I
man,
don't
I've
think I've
seen them
even
all.
seen the
I've
Val
seen
Kilmer
them
one.
all.
Like
I
I
love
said,
Batman.
I'm not down the Batman rabbit hole as much, but
I've seen a lot of movies. I like a lot of movies, but I do the Batman one has always been nostalgic for me. And the yellow Batman symbol, always, whenever I see that, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of being a kid.
I loved the Batman was a big thing at the Great Adventure by my house that I went to tons as a kid. So they
Uh-huh.
had like they had the first Batman roller coaster where your legs hung down and you
Oh,
like sat like in a
cool.
swing seat. And they had like a Universal Studios like thing where you watched Batman foil the Joker and the car. They had the car, like it
That's
drove out.
cool.
I think if I remember right, like the special shields went up too, if I remember right.
What?
It was really cool. And I remember it so vividly because I had gone like boating or something a couple days before we went to Great
Uh-huh.
Adventure. And they had so much pyrotechnics at the Batman that like my sunburn, I was like in so much pain because the heat was so intense that my sunburn, I was like, like that was terrible, man. So I vividly remember seeing that Batman show because the
That's awesome.
pyrotechnics like lit my sunburn on fire on my body. It was terrible, man.
That is awesome.
But I remember that ride. The ride was really cool too because when you would about to take off, it would go dunk 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 like your heart rate. As
So
you were
where
getting
was
ready.
that at? Where are you?
Great
where-
Adventure in New Jersey.
Oh, in New Jersey. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I don't know if I've ever done any Batman rides, but Batman, the movie, watching the movie is a ride in of itself.
Yeah, they had like cups. I had like a cup that I bought there that I had on my shelf, and I had some kind of little bat toy thing or something else that I had got from going to the park there as well.
What do you think your favorite part of the movie is?
Oh, I think I'm going to be along lines with you. I mean, I think as a kid, the car scene going into the Bat Cave with Kim Basinger.
Oh, that is cool scene.
Like that, like where that's going super fast and it's on the
Mhm.
dark road and all the leaves are blowing up, and then he like goes in through the mountain that like magically disappears like right
Yeah.
as he gets there, and then it's like the floor disappears, like watch your step. You know, like I think that
Yeah.
whole layer, the whole idea of like the layer and like, you know, the HQ where he's keeping track of everything that's
It's
going on. There's
20
just something really,
TV screens that are
yeah,
all
like the
the
my
old
kids,
CRT
dude,
monitors.
my daughter
tube
like came in.
televisions.
My daughter like came in at one point and she was like, what in the world is that? It's like the scene in the scene in the mansion and like the cameras behind the glass, and she's like, what the heck is that thing? I'm like, well, it had to be big for the VHS tape to fit in there. She's like, it's so big. And then she was
Yes.
mocking, she, you know, along with the whole 50s style dress and feel that Tim Burton brings to the movie. Like, I don't know if you noticed, surely you did, like all this, the sound effects for the bullets were like,
Yeah.
and she started making the noises. She's all like, it's so like bouncing. It was like very like folks, like not like fakey-ish kind of, but you know, that again,
But which I think
that
is kind of a
plays-
nod and throwback,
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of too, right? The series,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah, I
think
loved
is
it.
a fun. I'll say this: I love Batman. You know, it'll always have a place in my heart, and Michael Keaton's my favorite. But I'm excited in the future for us to do Dark Knight trilogy because the story, in Dark Knight trilogy is probably
Bomber.
my favorite
Bomber.
story. You know,
Yeah.
I Christian Bale's great, but Michael Keaton
I
will
love-
always be
I
number one
love-
for me.
I love Christian Bale's
But
Batman.
the story is awesome.
I do. I really love it. Well, but of course you're going to catch on one of the reasons why Batman Begins. Like, I love this one because it's iconic and it really took me back. But for sure, the Dark Knight trilogy with Christian Bale, because of course what happens, he has a mentor, and it's what's his bucket from, you know, the Star Wars.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn. So that whole thing, I love that whole
Which
thing,
ends
man.
up
Him getting
being-
trained. Yeah, the whole flip flop on that.
We can't
But
talk about
him
it. We have
being-
to talk about it at our next.
Yeah,
when we do
I'll
it.
stop. But there was another scene I was getting to. So I think as a kid, I loved the Batman layer scene, but I think watching it this time, I really enjoyed the Batwing, the whole Batwing, the collecting of the poisonous parade balloons. And that's the thing too, is like that the Joker would just so indiscriminately just kill everyone. He's so crazed. He was so crazed. It was so chaotic. It made me really uncomfortable. But it's just so crazy.
But I think
and
part
out
of that
control.
is just Tim Burton, right? He's
Yeah.
an expert at creating discomfort within a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun one to review. Like I said, it'll always have a place in my heart.
Amen and amen. It's a good one.
All right, friends, thanks for joining us.
Good times.
Go watch Batman.
Check out the original if you haven't watched it. It was a fun one to just sit down and
It's worth
watch again.
watching. I think the
Amen.
first two are a lot of fun. And join us on the next one. Adios, amigos.
See ya.